Carly said you wouldn't understand." "Understand what?" Jeff asked. Tell me, and I'll try. I really will." Brian shook his head and took a bite out of a piece of bacon he held between his thumb and forefinger as an uneasy silence settled over the kitchen. "Carly said you wouldn't understand." Were those really the last words his son had spoken to him? Over the next few days of men in hip waders and pickup trucks, of CB radios and low-flying helicopters, Jeff would struggle to remember something else, anything else Brian might have said. Did he really not say anything for the remainder of breakfast? Or while he was getting ready to go out to the woods? He was mad. It was possible he was giving his father the silent treatment. Likely, in fact. Had he even acknowledged that he had heard Jeff tell him to be home by 3:30 for his mom? Jeff remembered him turning and looking back at him as he went upstairs. But did that mean he had heard? Or was he just looking back, defiant, unhappy, misunderstood? Carly said you wouldn't understand. Jeff was in his shop when he heard the sound of gravel crunching in the driveway and the familiar engine. He stepped to the open door in time to see Diane's Explorer pull to a stop between the shop and the back porch. He raised a hand in greeting, then grabbed a rag to clean up. "Working pretty hard for a Sunday," Diane said as she crossed the yard toward him. He shrugged. "The work's always there. Figured I might as well." "And what are you elbow-deep in today?" she asked, coming to a stop less than an arm's length from him. He had to think for a moment. She had a knack for disarming him with nothing more than her presence. It had always been that way between them, but it had gotten worse since she had moved out. Times like this, with her looking so pretty and well-scrubbed, practically shining in the afternoon light, made it difficult for him to even think. "A rebuild for Frank Kelly. Nothing too challenging, then," she smiled at him. And it felt for a moment like they were flirting. "Could do this with my eyes closed," he said, without a hint of bragging. "How was the drive?" She shrugged. 2 hours on the freeway. Could do it with my eyes closed." He smiled. The argument that had ended their marriage had, in fact, grown out of their very first disagreement. It had started as a conversation 17 years before, and had played through the intervening time like background music to every disagreement between them. 17 years before, she had said it as if there had been no question. "You don't really want to stay here." They'd been sitting at the table in his father's kitchen, this kitchen, drinking the day's first cup of coffee after their first night together in the house where he had grown up. The house where he now lived with their son, though not for much longer. "What do you mean?" She had looked at him as if she didn't understand the question. He knew the feeling. It wasn't the first time they'd seemed to be coming from different worlds. They had both been going to school, BCIT in Vancouver. Jeff was qualifying for his apprenticeship, and Diane had been taking some introductory broadcasting classes. They had met at a party. Jeff didn't even know how he had ended up there, standing alone in the corner with a warm beer. She had rescued him by swooping in and dancing him away. That was the way she saw it, at least. It had been 3 months before he brought her home for the weekend, to meet and be met. "Why would I go anywhere else?" he had asked in response to her question. She had shaken her head. "There's a whole world to see out there. So much more than this." She had gestured around her at the kitchen, the house, the town, his world. If she had been at all mean, at all disparaging, it would have been over right then. But there had been no trace of haughtiness, no condescension. She was trying to rescue him again, he understood. It hadn't worked. "You made good time," he said, tossing his rag onto his workbench. "You're early." She glanced at her watch and shook her head. He turned sharply to glance at the shop clock. 4:20. "I even tried calling to say I was going to be a little late." 4:20. Later, he would wonder where the time had gone, how he had gotten